Good day, I'm Kemar, Stuart. On September 28, 2022, the Prime Minister of Barbados announced the details in regards to the signing of another IMF program. And included in this IMF program is pension reform and reform to state-owned enterprises. In the press conference earlier this month, the Prime Minister, when asked by a reporter, she venomously denied that pension reform will be included in this new IMF program, but it will be done in the old program, which ends tomorrow. Please watch the following video.
Prime Minister, you just announced that we're re-entering into an IMF program. Could you say... Okay. Right. Could you say if pension reform would be featured in this? Also, some might argue that it's because of this why we're re-entering into one. Because you gave some reasons, but you did not say anything about pension reform.
No, pension reform is part of the last program. It's not part of the current program. And pension reform, I announced pension reform for the public sector in March, and I also indicated that we are going to put Barbados' national insurance scheme on a steady footing. I told the country it is not in crisis. There's some gap.
Barbados' credit rating as stable is nonsensical, as Moody's already indicated publicly in a release that Barbados will not be downgraded as long as it signs another IMF program. Please remember that Barbados has not regained access to international capital markets after the voluntary default in 2018. Prime Minister Motley said that it was difficult to see how deep state-owned enterprise reforms were under the new program. This is a confusing statement, as the government circulated a survey previously under the first program asking the citizens of Barbados which state-owned enterprises should or should not be privatized. The strategy to cut as many state-owned enterprises from government funding is still in place. The strategy is to fund them via a tax or levy or outright privatization. The Prime Minister made reference to urban and rural development, which will be merged into one department. She made mention of CBC, which will be privatized, the Barbados Water Authority, which would eventually be privatized. As the first hint of this plan was when former Water Resource Minister Charles Griffith indicated that the government is appointing a 20-man water committee to tackle water woes in Barbados. The committee is made up of a list of wealthy businessmen: Barbados Workers Union leader Tony Moore, the Director of Finance Ian Carrington, who was at the last IMF press conference, Dr. Clay Maskell, as when they quizzed him on brass stats, admitted that government is now seeking to find the right price for water. The IMF in 2007 recommended that to achieve savings and to reduce the amount of money government spends on the Barbados Water Authority, that automatic price increases will address the cost-price imbalance to deliver water to Barbadians. The Prime Minister herself indicated that she provided an additional $30 million to the Barbados Water Authority instead of increasing its prices. As the IMF program progresses, the Barbados Water Authority will face a price increase in water rates. Transfer funding to entities such as the Water Authority are to be cut as part of the IMF deal, and an observation of other countries worldwide under IMF programs saw private water companies emerging when the conditionalities of the IMF program took its toll on governments. The Grantley Adams International Airport is still to be leased out for over 40 years. The new IMF program will continue to focus on digitization of the public service, as the impact of COVID pushed many countries to focus on delivering services online. The government declared that their policy is to take Barbados into a fully digital and cashless society under the original birth plan. The recent tongue lashing and attack by the acting Prime Minister Cynthia Bradshaw on government workers who are attached to economic programs such as the ASH program is a bluff to create reasons for the cutting of these programs as a condition of the IMF program. The programs were always intended to be temporary, but were used as tools to handle jobs for election purposes. That vile tongue lashing was unnecessary when the truth could have been told simply. In order to bring improvement in the government's fiscal position, all COVID-related expenses and ASH expenses will go. The implementation of a fiscal rule to limit domestic deficit financing will tighten in. The writing is on the wall as further expenditure cuts and governments will see thousands of government workers laid off under the new IMF program. The wage bill of government, which stood at around 850 million, is one of the reasons and the main consumers of government funding, and the IMF recommended that it should be cut. As the Prime Minister spoke about the UK's currency devaluation as a reference to Barbados not being as bad as others, the continued borrowing of foreign debt to keep the 2-to-1 peg in place, avoiding an external devaluation, comes with measures to implement an internal devaluation, which is one of the reasons why prices in Barbados are so high. The internal devaluation comes in the form of government laying off workers, cutting the wage bill, reducing funds allocated to ministries, reducing funds allocated to pension schemes, placing caps on capital expenditures, and overall cutting government-provided income. Dr. Kevin Greenwich spoke of how government is going about the internal devaluation while he was speaking with Lisa Lord on CBC TV in an interview. The mention of Barbados having $17 billion in debt in 2018 versus $13 billion today is numerically true, but disingenuous and misleading, because the government simply wrote off $4 billion in debt overnight owed to Barbadians in a very draconian debt restructuring and still has not repaid those debts to creditors. The central bank lost $1 billion and still needs to be recapitalized, and this is another missed target under the IMF program. The NIS lost close to $1 billion. Treasury bills were cut to the value of close to $1 billion, causing Barbadians to make world economic history, as this action only ever occurred in Russia 1998, Ukraine 1998, and Uruguay 2003. The last $1 billion were in overdrafts, government guarantees, SOE debt, and arrears. The danger that locals face moving forward in this IMF program is a high chance of another debt restructuring and reprofiling. This happens where the bond payments that governments promise these creditors are postponed. The likelihood of local creditors being repaid in cash is extremely low, and precedents have shown that government can abuse its parliamentary majority by using the clause included in the debt restructuring bill, which states that only 75% of creditors need to agree to any new changes in the new debt restructuring. It is most likely the case that at least 4 persons can own 75% of government debts. One last potential abuse of power is the government's new thirst for compulsory acquisitions of land. On the government's passage of the debt settlement bill in Parliament, persons whose land has been taken over by government under the Land Acquisition Act, Section 4 of the debt settlement bill made provisions for those persons whose land has been acquired by government to be paid in bonds. This provision also covers all legal claims or outstanding liabilities. So therefore, the question must be asked: if the government compulsory acquires the land in St. Lawrence Gap, do they have the money to pay those persons upfront, or will they be paying in bonds? Thank you very much. My name is